God bless you. My name is Pastor Romeo Soto, and I am so happy for this opportunity of sharing with you this very important information about Pentecostalism. So let's start with this. When we talk about Pentecostalism, we need to talk about how this early 1900 movement has had an impact in the 20th century church. This movement is unique because it is coming from nowhere in terms of the rise of Pentecostals. For example, there were not Pentecostals that signed the Declaration of Independence. There were not Pentecostals that participated in the Civil War. Still, with this, Pentecostalism is very familiar, at least for those who participate in Christianity today. Pentecostals and Charismatic are around 500 million around the world, and plus the ones that are sympathetic with Pentecostalism but do not identify as Pentecostals. So, out of those 500 million, 279 million around that are Pentecostals. So there are differences between Pentecostals and Charismatics, and we're going to talk a little bit about this. Uh, Historic Pentecostal and Charismatic movements. When we talk about this, we can mention the three waves that are known. Number one is Classic Pentecostalism. So when we talk about Classic Pentecostalism, we can say it was right there in the early 1900s. It began predominantly preaching about the book of Acts, focusing in the Pentecost. Now, in the modern world, some questions came. So they wanted to know how to recover the powerful message that we see in the book of Acts and that they felt they had lost. So the problem is that a church has seen the book of Acts not as prescriptive, but as descriptive. So that is to say, the church considered the book of Acts as the story on how the church itself unfolded through the apostles, we can say. But you don't see much people that apply the book of Acts or what it says as mandatory. So it is just a description of what happened in the first century, but not a prescription of what should happen in every century after. So Pentecostalism came in the middle of a war that was divided. In the Azusa Street, there was a black pastor leading a mixed congregation. His name was William J. Seymour. The first wave was kind of motivated by racist matters, and it was for the poor and for the uneducated people. Some people think that the Pentecostal movement started in Azusa Street, but in reality, American Pentecost started in Topeka, Kansas. Worldwide, we can say Pentecost started in Azusa Street. The revival in Pentecostalism and things like what we see now are not coming on the 20th century. In fact, we can find records of those emotional experiences and revivals in the 1700s. And what we see now is an intensification of those revival expressions. First wave most likely occurred in areas where the big churches and denominations had not much presence, and it was promoted more in paper by the news. Now, let's talk about the second wave, the charismatic renewal. It happened a number of decades after, 1950, 1960, and it was called like that by historians because it was not as structured like the first wave, because you can start to see predominantly white denominations and mainline denominations. Same experiences started to happen with them, same emotional experiences in universities and theaters. Now, the difference between Pentecostals and Charismatics is really, we can say, a matter of where they had their memberships, you might say. Most likely in the first wave, Pentecostals belonged to a Pentecostal denomination or a church that identified as Pentecostal or belonged to a Pentecostal structure, but not like what with the charismatic movement. People might identify as charismatic, but could attend to any other church, including, in a big number of cases, Roman Catholic churches. So we see Lutherans, Presbyterians, Methodists, and Baptist churches, all experiencing in some level this charismatic outpouring. So one of the main differences between the first and the second wave is that the first wave comes out of the renewal and revival movements, the holiness movements in the 1800s. So let's talk about the third wave, neo-charismatic, 1980s through today, also known as the wave of sign and wonders. And most likely Christians have been exposed to this movement somehow. We can see televangelists and preachers that do not necessarily preach about the book of Acts, but about miracles and frequent predictions about coming of Christ. Still with this, we can say that this is an intensification of the Pentecostalism that we saw or that we see in the 1800s. Azusa Street Revival actually started in a church. Then they moved to a house and became a Bible study, and numerous tales of hundreds of people trying to get in the house to be part of this revival. So Seymour then experiences the revival and speaks in other tongues. Then they moved to a place that was used to for a number of manufacturers in the poor part of LA. So Azusa Street Revival goes from 1906 through 1915 and became a national sensation. Out of these different denominations were formed Holiness Pentecostal Church in 1911, Foursquare Gospel in 1923, Church of God of Prophecy in the early 1900s, and of course the Assemblies of God in 1914. The AG is part of this, and it is expanding. There's still a lot to do. And I want to finish this lesson with this phrase that I heard from Dick Brogden. I loved it. And it says, "We will not change the world because we're strong. We will not reach the world because we are many. If we return to the simplicity of just having Jesus, we will obey the Great Commission." So I loved it. I wanted to share that with you. Thank you so much for your attention, and God bless you.